Have you ever wondered why Satan desperately wanted the body of Moses after his death? This question may seem unsettling or even bizarre, yet it is deeply rooted in biblical accounts. Moses, a towering figure in history, led the Israelites from the shackles of Egyptian slavery to the very doorstep of the Promised Land. He was the chosen vessel through whom God delivered the Ten Commandments. He was a prophet, a leader, a mediator, and a beacon of faith for an entire nation. But what happened after his death was both mysterious and shocking. According to the Bible, God himself laid Moses to rest in an undisclosed location. Yet an unusual and fierce altercation took place. The archangel Michael and Satan clashed over Moses' remains. This is not a story spun from thin air, but a direct reference from the book of Jude, verse 9, where Michael and Satan engage in a struggle over the body of Moses. This passage raises far more questions than it answers. Why would Satan have any interest in the lifeless body of a man who had already fulfilled his divine mission? What was at stake in this celestial battle? To understand this mystery, we must first examine the life of Moses, the circumstances surrounding his death, and the significance of this supernatural dispute. Moses was no ordinary man. He was a servant of God, chosen to deliver the Israelites from the hands of Pharaoh. His life was marked by divine encounters and miraculous acts that showcased the power of God. From the burning bush where he first heard God's call, to the plagues that shattered Egypt, to the miraculous parting of the Red Sea, his journey was filled with the supernatural. He received the Ten Commandments directly from God on Mount Sinai, stood as an intercessor when the Israelites sinned, and faithfully led God's people through the wilderness. Yet, despite his unparalleled faithfulness, he was barred from entering the Promised Land due to a critical mistake. God had specifically commanded Moses to speak to a rock so that water would flow out for the thirsty Israelites. However, in a moment of frustration and anger, Moses struck the rock instead. This act, seemingly small, carried heavy consequences. First, by saying, "Must we always bring out water for you to drink?" Moses failed to give full credit to God, implying that he himself had some role in the miracle. Second, he disobeyed God's specific instructions. This act of disobedience, though minor in human eyes, was seen as a grave offense before the Lord. As a result, God decreed that Moses would not enter the Promised Land. After all he had endured, after leading the people through the wilderness for 40 years, after witnessing the mighty hand of God, Moses would not step foot into Canaan. Instead, he died in the land of Moab. The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 34, verses 5 to 6, narrates the event of Moses' death. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab according to the word of the Lord, and he buried him in a valley in the land of Moab opposite Beth Peor. But no one knows his grave to this day. This passage is one of the most mysterious in all of Scripture. Unlike other biblical figures whose burial sites were known and honored, Moses' resting place was deliberately kept secret. But why? God personally burying Moses is an extraordinary act. Nowhere else in the Bible do we see such direct divine involvement in a burial. It speaks volumes about the unique relationship Moses had with God. The Bible describes Moses as a man who spoke to God face to face, as one speaks to a friend. He was not just a prophet. He was a confidant of the Almighty. His burial by God was an act of honor and love, demonstrating the special place he held in divine history. But it also serves a strategic purpose. The secrecy surrounding his burial was not without reason, for there was a spiritual battle unfolding behind the scenes. Satan, the adversary, sought to claim the body of Moses. This was not a mere act of curiosity or mischief. Satan had a calculated plan, a sinister motive behind this unusual desire. The Bible does not reveal all the details of this cosmic struggle, but we are given enough insight to understand the gravity of the situation. Michael, the archangel, was dispatched to contend with Satan over Moses' body. This was no ordinary conflict. It was a direct confrontation between the forces of good and evil. Michael, despite his great power, did not engage in a battle of his own strength. Instead, he said, "The Lord rebuke you." This statement is crucial. It highlights the authority of God over all things. Even the mightiest of angels rely on the name and power of God to overcome the enemy. Before we continue, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps us to continue sharing the profound wisdom, insights, and timeless truths of the Bible. Also, ensure you watch this video till the end to gain valuable insights from the life, teachings, and miracles of Jesus Christ. But why was Satan so interested in Moses' body? There are several possible explanations. One possibility is that Satan sought to prevent Moses from being resurrected or assumed into heaven. We see in the New Testament that Moses later appeared alongside Elijah during the transfiguration of Jesus. Satan, knowing God's plans for Moses, may have attempted to thwart this divine purpose. Another possibility is that Satan wanted to turn Moses into an object of idolatry. The Israelites had a history of falling into idolatry. They worshipped the golden calf when Moses was on Mount Sinai. They later turned the bronze serpent that Moses had made into an idol. If they had access to Moses' body, they might have been tempted to venerate it, creating another distraction from the worship of the one true God. Satan thrives on leading people into false worship, and Moses' remains could have been a powerful tool in his schemes. Another reason for Satan's interest may have been to use Moses as an example of failure and condemnation. Satan is called the accuser of the brethren in Revelation chapter 12, verse 10. He could have used Moses' past sins, the murder of the Egyptian, his breaking of the stone tablets, his disobedience in striking the rock, as reasons to argue that Moses was unworthy of God's grace. The devil constantly seeks to remind us of our past, using our failures to bring shame and doubt. Yet, in God's kingdom, grace triumphs over sin. Moses' story is not one of condemnation, but of redemption. Despite his shortcomings, he was still honored by God and later appeared with Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration. Finally, Satan may have sought to mock God's power by seizing Moses' body. The devil is in constant rebellion, always looking for ways to challenge God's authority. If he could take hold of Moses' remains, he could claim a victory over one of God's greatest servants. However, as always, God's plans prevailed. Michael, in the power of the Lord, resisted Satan's claim, and the body of Moses remained in God's hands. This story carries deep spiritual lessons. It reminds us of the importance of true worship. The Israelites were easily swayed into idolatry, and Satan sought to exploit this weakness, but God ensured that their focus remained on Him alone. It also reminds us that God's grace is greater than our failures. Moses made mistakes, but he was still chosen, still honored, and still used in God's plan. This story also teaches us about spiritual warfare. Satan is always looking for ways to deceive, accuse, and destroy. But through faith and reliance on God's power, we can resist him, just as Michael did. Ultimately, this passage stands as a testament to God's enduring protection and wisdom. Satan's schemes are many, but God's wisdom is greater. His power cannot be thwarted, and his plans will always prevail. So, as we reflect on the battle over Moses' body, let us see it not just as a celestial confrontation, but as a powerful reminder of God's sovereignty, grace, and the ultimate triumph of His divine will. Thanks for watching, and see you on the next one.